The nucleus of today's sermon formed way back in February 1980, when I was 14 years of age and first started catching buses. Every morning at 8:10 a.m, I would catch what was then an STA or State Transport Authority bus from Herrings Lane in Happy Valley to Richards Drive in Morphett Vale, where I would get off the bus, cross the road and enter the grounds of my secondary school, Wirianda High School. In the afternoon, I would get on the bus at Richards Drive and get off on Pampala Road, Woodcroft, where I would climb the hill to the stables where my horse was kept. Somewhere through the routine of riding, mucking out and feeding the horse, my mum would arrive to help and drive me home. Occasionally I wouldn't go to the stables, and so I would catch the bus all the way from school to home. In the mornings, and if I went all the way home in the afternoon, a bus ticket cost 20 cents. If I got off at the stables, the fare was only 10 cents. What was most crucial about these trips was that on the top of every bus ticket I bought was a quote, a pearl of wisdom. I collected those tickets. They weren't the horrible cardboard tickets like they are now that need to be verified in a special machine. They were made from thin, cheap paper. When I got home from school, I would take out the quotes that I'd kept carefully stored inside my Wirianda High School folder and put them on my dressing table and read them and reread them before storing them in my old Arnott's biscuit tin and put under my bed. They fascinated me. Some of them I thought were very wise, and I committed them to memory for a time when my life would become more complex and in need of such wisdom. Others of them I disputed hotly, but to no one in particular. My family did not share my interest in bus ticket quotations, strangely. So I carried on these discussions and these debates in the comfort and privacy, and let's be honest, wisdom of my own head. I wasn't daunted by my family's lack of appreciation for these finer things in life, because I knew that my bus tickets would come in handy one day, and they have. One of the things that really interested me was that for every quote, an opposite could be found. For every the family that plays together stays together, there was familiarity breeds contempt. For every time I was urged to look before you leap, I was warned that he who hesitates is lost. 2 heads are better than 1, I was told, but then too many cooks spoil the broth. Aphorisms, proverbs and sayings manage to distill and encapsulate big and important ideas into a few words, into just a short phrase. But they can lure us into a false sense of being wise, a wisdom we haven't yet earned. They can be beguiling, too beguiling. They kid us into thinking that we've grasped a deep thought, a complex idea, and they do this by their wit and their brevity, particularly in this soundbite-hungry culture. But poke them, expose them to the antiseptic of sunlight, and you will find that they ride roughshod over all sorts of subtleties, nuances, and complexities. When I grew up and started to work as a nurse, I stopped collecting bus tickets, not because I wasn't interested, but because I walked to work. And I sometimes came across charge nurses who fancied themselves as kind of motivational speakers or inspirational life coaches long before those positions were ever invented. And they would pepper our corridors and tea rooms with little motivational quotes, and the monthly newsletter with the same. It used to amuse me sometimes and enrage me at others at how sagely other nurses used to nod at these pearls of wisdom, as if they had discovered the secret of life and death and the universe, when they had no idea the context within which the quote was written, what nuances and complexities had been lost, both in its writing and then again in its placing in our particular context, or how, on its own, how incomplete that quote was. I often wondered if a workshop run by me for other hospital staff, exploring the limitations of quotes and aphorisms and the tools we need to employ to ensure that we get the most out of them while recognising what we can never get out of them. I wondered if a little workshop run by me would be helpful. But then there were more pressing matters at hand, like sick patients. For every proverb or aphorism we have another that says pretty much the opposite. It is not that such oppositions cancel each other out and leave us with nothing. It is rather that each saying captures only part of the truth. They run us into murky waters only when the realisation that there is undoubtedly something in it then slides unthinkingly into the assumption that there's nothing that is not in it. It is crucial to remember that each saying captures only part of the truth. A bit like viewing a point from one part of a kaleidoscope. What you see is true from that angle, but there are many other angles from which to view the same point. I would now like to look at two well-known proverbs. Maybe you've thought about them, maybe you haven't. The first originated in the 19th century, and it is, "Practice makes perfect." This proverb would have to have been the one that was drummed into me most in my upbringing. To practice, to prepare, is almost next to godliness for me, and so it was for my family. When I've been good at something, I've wanted to make it better, and I've approached and achieved it nearly always by practice, lots of it. Getting up at 6 a.m. every morning before school in the winter to practice my dressage moves on my horse have held me in good stead for all the other things that have needed practice in my life, including the Sunday service here in church. I got up at 6 this morning and practiced this sermon. I do that every time I take a service, no matter how long I've been preaching for. I've always practiced the things I'm good at to make them better. And I've always practiced the things I'm bad at just to make them adequate. As most of you know, I have a slight developmental disorder which makes sequences and practical tasks very difficult. So how do I cope? By practicing over and over again until I have an adequate enough grasp of the task that I need to do. This practicing, while not making me perfect, has ensured that I've been the best I can be on most occasions. I say most because I think this dedication to practice has had its limitations. It has been boring, very boring on occasions. And sometimes it's led to a very wooden approach, at times that I think lacks spontaneity and an ability to respond in the moment to changing circumstances. Still, when I was studying a communications degree at the University of South Australia, we had a guest lecturer on public speaking. And he told us that when all else failed, we only need to remember 3 things. I was keen to hear such short, distilled and digestible wisdom, so my ears pricked up. What were these 3 things? We asked. Preparation, 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 he replied. Thanks for that, we said. So what do the experts say? In his book, Outliers, the non-fiction writer and journalist Malcolm Gladwell claims that researchers have settled on what they believe is a magic number for true expertise, 10,000 hours. Does this mean that science has finally shown how exactly much practice is required to make one perfect? 10,000 hours is a suspiciously round figure. But the neurologist Daniel Levitin claims the same figure comes up in study after study. It was first spotted as significant by the psychologist Kay Anders Ericsson, whose research suggested this was the amount required by talented violinists to become elite performers. Assuming the research is fundamentally sound, what does it really show? No one claims that anyone can become an expert just as long as they put in the practice. Ericsson's study was based on students who had already been to Berlin's elite Academy of Music. 10,000 hours may maximise your potential, but no amount of time spent with a needle and thread can turn a sow's ear into a silk purse. The contemporary British philosopher Julian Baggini points to the experimental band Sparks, who capture another limitation of the proverb, practice makes perfect, in their song, "How Do I Get to Carnegie Hall?" To which the legendary answer is, of course, practice. But Sparks sing, "The audience was deafening, I was ready, but there is still no sign of you." Even when practice makes you very good, there's no guarantee that your accomplishment will ever be recognised.